As I've mentioned before, I'm reading this lovely book by Paul D. Miller, Albrecht Drue, Ghost Puncher. Um, it's a little bit of noir, a little bit of Massachusetts Arkham Miskatonic horror, a little bit of humor, a little bit of Philip Marlowe, a little bit of Bukowski. It's it's kind of a mess plot wise. No offense, Paul Miller. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's gone into it, and a lot of stuff. There's this unexpected supervillain drug dealer that shows up, or superhero drug dealer, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm enjoying it immensely. I strongly, strongly recommend it to anyone who has a taste for weird humor. There's a book a couple of years back I read called Resume with Monsters by, oh my God, who wrote Resume with Monsters? But it's in the category of humorous. I'm not sure if it's humorous horror, humorous science fiction. I don't know, but I recommend you give it a try anyway. Albrecht Drew, Ghost Puncher, um, uh, Montag Press, and let's go. Let's go. This is chapter 3, chapter 4, verse 2. He has them arranged in chapter and verse, which I think is a nice conceit. As always, if you are hearing this and you like it, hit the like button. If you like it and you want to subscribe to all my new videos, hit the subscribe button. If you want to see more of my cats, then you can just ask, look, there's a cat. Isn't that cute? Everybody wants to see cats. Nobody wants to hear people read, but that's all right. We'll be okay. You're so beautiful. What in the name of fuck is he doing here? Dave said, pulling Eldon away from the rest of the ghost geeks. Before they'd even arrived on site, Hal had gotten Grigsby and Eleanor fairly well lit on a bottle of schnapps they'd scored along the way, and they were already endangering the mission with their decidedly unprofessional antics. Relax, Eldon said. Al's just taken a sudden interest in the paranormal, and he wanted to see what we do. He promised he'd be on his best behavior, and I doubt he's going to start a fight with Mrs. Barringer. Dave bit his lip, thoroughly unconvinced that Al wasn't above punching a septuagenarian if she looked at him funny. Fine, but he's your baggage. Keep him at base camp and keep him quiet. Sure thing, Sarge. Eldon said. Dave liked him when people called him Sarge, even though he'd been discharged 2 years before under thoroughly unpleasant circumstances. Dave swirled a finger into the air, whistled for the ghost geeks to saddle up. They gathered around Dave's black Humvee, Eleanor and Grigsby prodding each other to calm down and shape up for the pregame. Al hung back from the group, taking in the sights. Barringer Manor looked like a goddamn haunted house, all right. A sagging Victorian at the corner of an overgrown lawn, complete with wilted myrtles and a wrought iron fence way the hell out in the middle of the woods. At least it looked like it was way out in the middle of the woods. All aging mansions of the Founders Row did. The road drew a green oasis between Jennings Heights and the more civilized dangers of the Money District, a place where old families and old secrets could stay out of the sight of the public and still keep an eye on people who existed only to serve them. The sun had slunk below the trees, an appropriate autumn dusk sweeping across the New England wood. Al didn't see any ghosts, though, and he didn't feel neither, which he found a bit perturbing. Shouldn't ghost punchery have come with some kind of sixth sense or something? All right, said Dave, addressing his troops. Grigsby had an old-school TV camera on his shoulder, aiming it like a rocket launcher at Dave. He gave the Sarge a quick thumbs up. Lyric, Cletus, thanks for coming early to get the camera set up. Appreciate that. We've got base camp set up downstairs. This is a big place, 4 stories in the basement, so we'll be platooning between each. I want EVPs taken at regular intervals and keep the chatter to a minimum. We're not going to have much in the way of outside interference thanks to the protected nature of this location. So anything we get on tape is a possible piece of evidence. Any questions? Al couldn't resist. He raised his hand. Dave nodded at him with an air of aggravation. Oh, look, our guest has a question. Are we gonna see some action, Sarge, or is this another bug hunt? Stow it, Hudson. Dave said, catching Al off guard. Of course Dave had seen aliens. Why the hell else would he have joined the Marines? Now, Mrs. Barringer reports activity everywhere in the house. Creaking steps, shadow figures, the whole bit. She's been having these experiences for years, but recently it's gotten to be a bit too much. Anyways, this is going to be a good one, guys. I can feel it. We're squad ready? Hoorah! That's a Marine thing. The group filed through the front door, following the remains of a stone path. The front gate, sorry. The group filed through the front gate, following the remains of a stone path to the door. Al taking up the rear and getting his rear pinched by a gleeful Eleanor on the way. The oldest woman in America met them at the door. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, she said. Her voice was like the rustle of dry leaves blown across frozen grass, brittle and sharp. Welcome to Barringer Manor, she said, as they filed past her into the receiving room. She put a hand on Al's shoulders as he went by. So he smiled at her. She didn't return a smile, but wizened her eyes at him and scurried toward Dave. There was something about the old bird that bugged Al. She looked at him like she knew him, like she knew something about him. He didn't want her to. The inside of Barringer Manor was just as foreboding as the outside. Its furnishings original to the place and armored in the dust of age. Oil portraits of past residents, long interred in the family plots out back, glared down from every angle. The whole man's done on lace and threadbare velvet. Everywhere in the form of leering crucifixes and austere angels hung the trappings of militant Christianity. Al had no problem with religion, regardless of what form it took or what hats its practitioners wore. He just couldn't stand the in-your-face ubiquity of the trite, obnoxious iconography that came along with somebody who wanted to make sure you knew exactly which god you thought they made them better than you. The posturing and the preaching was a great way to hide all the things they didn't want you to see. The base camp Dave and the others had erected in the dining room stuck out like an unwelcome time traveler. Banks of computer monitors and laptops congregated on a couple of folding tables. Vines of cable ran from the tables to the generators outside and from room to room. Dave and Mrs. Barringer huddled together in animated conversation, the latter occasionally taking a worried peek at Al. Whatever she said, whatever the former said, "Oh, I am tired today," it seemed to allay her fears, but Dave shot Al a baleful glance anyway before gathering the geeks for some last-minute notes. Al turned away, keeping his hands in his pockets. Absently, he poked his head around a corner into the room opposite and got his first minor surprise of the evening. There was a kid in there, sitting in silence, watching a behemoth old console TV in the grayscale darkness. Kid might be underselling it. He was probably 16 or 17, as fat as a Jennings Heights blunt. He must have felt Al looking at him because he turned his head back and nodded in the general direction before going back to his show. Fucking weirdo. How was he supposed to truly appreciate the comedic genius of Sanford and Son with the sound turned off? He must have wanted not to disturb the old lady, but respectful deference has to take a backseat to art. Come on, noob, Cletus said, pulling Al towards the dining room and base camp. Usually taciturn at best, Cletus had an air about him of absolute unwillingness to put up with any of Al's shit. You're with me tonight. The rest of the ghost geeks broke their formation with military precision. Al had to admit that if he'd been the one to invite a bunch of strangers into his home to suss out the root of its haunting, he'd want them looking all practiced in their matching sweatshirts and abundant gear, too. It gave them an air of officiality. Their kit backed them up, each with each supernatural soldier, brandishing all kinds of EMF meters, digital recorders, video cameras, and whatnots. The Bitburg Supernatural Squad had a well-earned reputation, hundreds of social media followers, and no-nonsense demeanor rarely seen among the rubes who ended up as filler on shows like Ghost Quest. They were pros, and it showed. What do we do now? Al said, settling into the chair next to Cletus, who kept standing, arms crossed over his chest. Watch for ghosts. Cletus said, though Loquacious wouldn't have described him well, Cletus was not an idiot. He was like a tree or a standing stone, monolithic and silent, but aware of everything around him. Al watched his focus shift from screen to screen, simultaneously absorbing the images from a dozen or so cameras scattered around the back-bowed mansion. Cletus had done this a bunch of times before, and it was obvious he was not going to miss a thing. Al stopped watching the Watchmen and started watching what the Watchmen were watching. Except for the command center, everything was dark, seen through the greenish haze of night vision cameras. Al had to wonder if Eldon realized just how much of his money Dave had spent on their gear. From the looks of things, these guys were better equipped than any of the crews on TV. Of course, none of that candle held as shit to Al's eyes, what with him having, not actually just seen a ghost, but many ghosts. The geeks had all broken up into pairs and started sweeping the house floor by floor, room by room. They kind of looked like ghosts from the future themselves. Their night vision goggles like little pairs of neon will-o'-wisps cavorting in the gloom. Grigsby and Eleanor went up to the attic, setting their gear up for an EVP session where they basically asked dumb questions into the dark and hoped to find some garbled response on the recorders. When played back the next day, they worked in efficient silence, a pair of resurrection men digging up a grave. They seem like a good pair, Al said. They are. Now quiet. Can't have you spoiling the evidence. Eldon wasn't concentrating on what he was supposed to be doing. What with the amount of his eyes spent stuck to Lyric's ass. She was fiddling with some piece of high-tech magic, prattle whispering about the poor lingering spirits as she did. Every once in a while, she'd ask Eldon something directly, and he'd say something that added a ruddy glow to his spectral face. Oh, look at that. Eldon's got a lyric boner. Cletus shushed him, then stifled himself because poor Eldon's lyric boner was in danger of poking the poor girl every time she stopped moving. Sarissa, as always, hung at Dave's side, her arms spread slightly, palms turned to the floor. She didn't bother with the goggles and kept her eyes closed, her nose pointed at the ceilings. At regular intervals, she spoke, and her words almost always began with, "I sense," or "there is a presence." Dave swallowed that shit like it was ice cream. "For the love of fuck," Al said, rolling his eyes and pushing away from the table. This time, Cletus smacked him in the head, and Al got the message. He tented his forearms in front of the monitor, set his chin in his knuckles, and tried very hard to study the images that crawled across them. It wasn't much more than 15 minutes later. Their team got their first real spook of the night. Coincidentally, it was about 5 minutes before when Al gave the fuck up on this perdition of tedium and stood up, just out of Cletus's reach. "Smoking," said Al. Cletus's blank granite face didn't change from its normal menace, but it didn't have to for Al to know that the big man wanted to strangle him right about now. He didn't know much about the guy, other than that he had a mug like one of those heads on Easter Island and a body like Solomon Grundy. Al imagined that Cletus had never been and would never be picked on. "Outside," Cletus said. Al held up the peace hands, headed for the doorway. He passed the room where the kid was tuned in to Stanford and Son, the black and white snicker-snack of decades-old television goodness dancing on the walls like spastic jitterbugging. "Nope. Hey. Yeah. Sorry. Welcome back. Neighbor's home." Let the man read. He doesn't even read. Thank you, Epic Man. Of course I read. There's nobody out there. Man, you people. Okay. Something struck Al, or Al's thought box anyway, as he stepped outside. Lucky already clenched in the corner of his mouth, Zippo at the ready. He lit up, well aware that Dave wouldn't have left the single room uncovered by his own personal Big Brother setup, but almost as certain he hadn't seen the fat kid on any of the monitors. He smoked the cigarette quickly, not all the way to the butt, before flicking the burning end into the grass and racing back inside. Fire safety be damned. He stuck his head through the doorway. The kid, more than a little annoyed, shifted on the couch, glaring at him. Al smiled like a cartoon character, caught stealing cookies, and wiggling his finger in one hand, shot into the command center where Cletus made his lack of amusement apparent. Al, undeterred, half shoved him out of the way, studied every camera view with academic intent. "Al," Cletus said, shifting his head away from Al's invading posterior. "What the—" "Quiet," Al said. Cletus's eyes widened, and a bit of red fleshed out his pallid cheeks. He was right. The kid was not a monitor. Even though his room, his dormant TV, and his couch were. Nobody could see him but Al, and he had a pretty good idea what that meant. "Sorry, big guy," Al said. He made a full-body gesture of surrender, sliding away from the reddening man giant before he popped the vessel. "Think I left something outside." Cletus let him go, shaking away the rouge on his face and returning to his post. "Idiot." Verse 3. Al sidled into the fat kid's room, all kinds of quiet, friendly rolling off in waves. "No, I'm not here to punch you. Certainly not. I'm a buddy, really." Nonchalant as a pickpocket in a room with baggy pants, he plopped down next to the fat kid. He suppressed a cough as a cloud of dust mushroomed around him. "How you doing?" he said. The kid stared at the intruder, more surprised than anything. "Quiet," he said, his voice a wispy growl made the curtains flutter for the first time in years. "Watching Sanford and Son." "Cool," Al said. He flashed a used car salesman's shit-eating grin, SEG, settled in and pointed his peepers at what he knew, if he could see, was a blank screen. The presence of the ghost time overlap puddled around him, giving Al a glimpse into the interminable world inhabited by the lingering phantom. The kid grudgingly shifted enough of its bulk that Al had room for himself on the couch. Still irritated, Ghost Boy huffed and grumbled in a way that Al swore made the whole house shake. Chapter 4. Al was right. Up in the attic, Grigsby jumped about 3 feet into the air. True to her nature, or maybe just her age, Eleanor only sat up a little straighter. "You heard that," Grigsby said once he landed. "With the ears God gave me," Eleanor said. They spread the word over the radio, shivering the spines of every ghost geek in the house, none of whom had missed the Barringer Manor's localized earthquake. Verse 5. Side-like, Al eyed the fat kid, who seemed more interested in the show than in the intruder. The two of them were sitting together in an overlap where the dead world mingled with the living one. As far as he knew, Al was the only one who knew it. In the now where the kid sat, he was in the bedroom of every 1980s parent's wet dream. Football trophies on the shelf, a framed picture of Jenny McGoodgirl, all bangs and big hair, from front and center from the top of the monolithic TV, with plenty of all-American knickknacks decorating the cheery dream. Al's now, by comparison, was pretty much the same, just buried under 30-odd years' worth of dust. The only difference was the memorial portrait of our beloved son, Conacher Dietrich Barringer, always and forever, had replaced Jenny's sophomore yearbook photo atop the TV. The ghost kid didn't resemble the one in the picture much. Al gave him credit. If he'd been a 15-year-old Poper Heights girl sitting behind him in English comp, the Conacher from the photo wouldn't have had to do much to make her panties burst into flame. Still, the kid's eyes were the same. That was enough to make Al recognize him. "Jesus, Connie," Al said. He tried to recognize the two images, the star athlete in the picture and the misshapen flesh sack on the couch. failed epically. What the fuck happened to you? Conacher's ghostly profile rotated until its empty, cold brick eye sockets fixed on Al. In a slow, expanding meld, the sockets grew, the bridge between them splitting in the middle, peeling back until only a single black circle remained. The black disc quivered, bulged, flattened, quivered itself into a round-cornered square. Shiny, glassy, glistening gray melted and dripped from the upper edge until a TV screen, just like the one in front of them, replaced the empty black. Al couldn't take his eyes off Conacher's television set head. The screen clicked, hummed, and blasted out its images. Holy crap, Dave said. Sorry, verse 6. Holy crap, Dave said, somewhere in the bowels of the Barringer Manor. Jadue, his breath left him before he could finish. Sarissa's arms constricted him, damn near carried them both to the ground. The house shuddered again, suddenly festooned with silver fireflies that wriggled and danced like fireworks in the musty air. Wow. I think I'm going to... This is all very exciting, but I think I need to do some things. Anyway, I'm going to call it quits here. Thank you all for stopping in. If you liked what you heard or what you're hearing, hey, is there somebody out there? Are there people out there who are actually listening to this? I see 2 viewers on my screen there. If you are, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and more importantly, leave a comment and let me know who you are and where you're listening from, because that's what I want to know. I want to know demographic. I want to know how you came here, and I don't even care if you like it. I don't care if anyone likes it. I do this because it's my pleasure. Albrecht Drue, Ghost Puncher. Anyway, I'll see you in a bit, and stick around. There's lots to come. Make sure to come back because there's lots more Albrecht Drue and ghosts to punch.